So yeah, PhpStorm 9 has been released just a couple of weeks ago on July 8th. So we're going to go through some of the major features now. And with this release, first of all, we decided to refine the editing experience. And as usual, all the subsystems related to PHP and not only PHP got updated. So we're not going to go through all the features, but we'll try to show some of the major ones. So for example, what I will start with is a PHP introduced parameter refactoring. So as you know, PhpStorm is known for many good and advanced refactorings you can use in order to keep your code clean and dry and neat and do all the refactorings project-wise. So in new refactoring is introduce parameter refactoring, and it's used to add a new parameter to a function from a local variable or a constant inside its body. So for example, we have this string here, and let's just select this one, and we can now use Control-T or just use the context menu to find the proper refactoring, and that's refactor, extract or introduce, and then parameter. And here we can introduce some parameter. Let's name it string test. And we see that it got introduced here in the function declaration, and also it's got its place in the PHP doc, and it's also had been introduced exactly in the place where we run the refactoring. And yeah, that's one of the latest additions to refactoring capabilities. And apart from that, in PHP, from the PhpStorm side, we also got updated PHP type inference, support for persistent language injections, and some inspections and intentions, and many different PHP related things. So the next thing I would like to show is called postfix code completion. And in general, postfix code completion helps you reduce backward code jumps when you write code, and when you write some construct. For example, we begin here with some variable is equal to 1, for example. Then we post annotate it with if, and then we use the tab command to transform it to if statement, and that's called postfix code completion. And that might be very handy, so you don't need to go back to the very beginning of the construct you just wrote in order to transform it to if statement or any or some different types of constructs. And in general, you can study what postfix offers in the settings in the postfix completion menu. So you can enable postfix completion for different languages, and it's been introduced for JavaScript earlier and also for Java in IntelliJ. And we brought with this release postfix code completion for PHP, and you see that you can use it for echo, for if, else, or not null, and some other types of constructs. So basically, you just write the construct, put a kind of live template at the end, and then press the tab key, and that's it. And also, if you would like to see all the things which can be used for the postfix completion, you can use Command G on Mac or Control G, and you see all the postfix code completion options here. So, for example, var dump, yeah. So from another side, for PHP related stuff, we also got updated structure view. So you got quite a lot of updates in this useful pane, and also you can use PHP surrounds for HTML and PHP files, and you can also use separate PHP constructor templates, which can be now edited in settings, and also we brought support for fluent setters creation. So yeah, that's from a PHP side. And moving to PHP 7, as the PHP is going to get a new update, and PHP 7 beta release is really close, and there has been alpha and I think one of the beta. builds as well. So PhpStorm needs to support all the latest language developments. So we already brought a partial support for PHP 7 in PhpStorm 9, and let's look how it works. And one of the things which is brought by PHP 7 is named return type hints. It's when you can specify a type for the return of the function, and basically, that means that the keywords and some of the language constructs are changed, and PHP before PhpStorm 9 couldn't understand what actually we mean in this place, what is array. And here we see that currently we have a language settings set to PHP 5.6, I think, and we see that return type declaration is available in PHP 7 only, and if we wouldn't have a support for PHP 7 here, then we would see the red code as we see right now. So what we are going to do right now is changing their PHP language level to PHP 7. So you see return type hints, scalar type hints, and etc. Then we apply the settings, and we see that there is no more red code here when we use return type hints. And of course, that's not all the features that we supported. We supported only some initial stuff because we need to wait while PHP 7 gets to the really stable stage. And one of the things you can do as well right now is to set up a PHP 7 interpreter. So in order to do that, let's use Vagrant. So there is a very good Vagrant box prepared by Rasmus Lerdorf, and we are going to run it in our instance. So just a couple of seconds to bring it up. So I'm using Rasmus PHP 7 development Vagrant box, and you just get loaded. So right now we can go to our settings and configure a PHP interpreter to be PHP interpreter running on Vagrant. So it's going to be PHP 7 interpreter. Just a second while we are communicating to the Vagrant box. So here we get connection, and yeah, we need to confirm the connection to the box. Checking PHP installation. Yeah, now we get PHP version and configuration file. Well, we don't have a debugger, but we don't need it right now. So we got a remote PHP 7 interpreter. It's here, and we basically can use this PHP 7 interpreter running on the Vagrant box for basically everything we do in the PhpStorm right now. And remote PHP interpreters in general are very, very interesting things, which mean that you can just use the Vagrant box or some other kind of virtualized environment, and you don't need to run PHP on your local machine. You don't need to install your PHP local environment. So we just shut down this Vagrant box for now, so that it doesn't eat any of the resources here. And let's move on. So one of the other subsystems which are really crucial for PHP development when we are working with PhpStorm is the debugger. And PhpStorm is renowned for the world-class debugging capabilities, and you can do quite a lot. And one of the things we've seen lately is that there are not that many problems in configuring debugging in PhpStorm, but there are some problems in configuring debugger in the environment. So whether you use a Vagrant environment or you use some local machine or whatever, there are some problems when you don't need some of the php.ini configurations or whatever else, and everyone sometimes missed any of the options there. So we decided to focus on some of the configuration issues. So right now we moved web server debug validation, which we introduced a couple of versions ago, to the run menu. So we just go to run and web server debug validation, and now you see that there is difference between local web server or shared folder when you have a local installation or remote web server. So for remote web server, you need to provide a deployment server and path to the created validation script, which is basically will be used and deployed on the server, and we will get some response back to PhpStorm. So in this case, we use local web server. So you need to provide a path to this create validation script, which is local folder of the project, and also a URL to validation script, which is going to be run in order to get all the results. So we just hit validate, and we see that, yeah, I have a server name, I have a php.ini, I have a debugger extension installed there, but there is a problem. The Xdebug port is 9001, while PhpStorm is set to listen for the debugger at the port 9000. So that's definitely a problem, and we need to fix that. So how are we going to approach that? With this new version, we also reworked the settings for the interpreters. So I'm using this MEMP and PHP 5.5.14. And PhpStorm can now spot the configuration file and other related configuration files you use in order to work with your PHP interpreter. So we just open that in the editor right in PhpStorm, so you don't need to open anything to edit the configuration of php.ini. And we see that in Xdebug section there is a remote port set to 9001, and we just need to make it 9000 so that it works properly. So we saved it, and we go back to MEMP in order to stop servers and then run them back. So let's just restart Apache. It's got restarted, so we're getting back to the PhpStorm, and then what we need to do now is to go again to run web server debug validation and try to run it one more time. So yeah, we see the remote port is set up correctly, so everything works okay. There are no more notifications from PhpStorm. So what we are going to do next is to enable listening for connections in PhpStorm, and then we need to go to Google Chrome. I use Google Chrome and Chrome helper for Xdebug here, so I set it to debug, and I restart the page, go to PhpStorm, and I see that debug session was finished without being paused. So PhpStorm now provides you different troubleshooting information on what's going on with your debugging connection. So apparently, we just started listening for debugging connections, but we didn't start. We didn't stop. We didn't put any breakpoints, and we didn't select the option to break at first line in PHP scripts, which I'm doing right now. So I've just done it. Break at first line in PHP scripts. It's here, and we're going back to the browser, and we are reloading the page, and now we should get the debugging connection. Yeah, and we got the debugging connection here. So we see everything which is going on in our code right in the editor. I just minimize it a bit, and let's just step into a bit to see how the debugging is actually done. So now we have all the information on how to fix debugging, and we have the configuration set up properly. So we go through the code, and you might already spot that we provide a special feature which is called Inline Debugger for PHP, and that actually enhances the debugging experience a lot, because with an Inline Debugger for PHP, all live debugging data is shown directly in the editor, as you see, and all the variable values. For example, here we have this VG review start array, and we have a variable here, and all the variable and array values are shown directly in the editor, so that it's integrated in the current editor's look and feel, and you don't need to go to the variables pane, and you don't need to set up any watches or whatever to see what's actually going on with this or that variable, because all of them are shown directly in the editor, which actually saves you a lot of time and makes you much more productive when you debug, because of all the context provided right in the editor. And also one more handy feature, which might be considered quite small, but that's still very convenient to work with, is that in the variable pane we now have in the content menu a special option to copy value as printar, var export, or JSON encode, so that if you want to copy your variable value for some future references or whatever, you just can do it right from variable pane, and that actually helps quite a lot as well. And one other thing related to debugging configuration I would like to show as well, and for that we will need to remove PHP server, which is already created in our environment, and I'm removing this localhost. So we're now listening for connections, and we're just going to restart the session. So we've got a new incoming connection from Xdebug. And let's assume that the first connection you got are in PhpStorm, you don't have a server configured. And right here in incoming connection from Xdebug, you can choose local file or project here, or you can import mappings from deployment. So for example, if you provide some staging server or whatever, some development environment, and you have a deployment configured, you can reuse these deployment mappings to be converted to debugging mappings, and you don't need to make any more configuration so that it's more connected now. So that's what we had for all the debugging configuration and debugging experience. And actually, I hope that you enjoyed that and got some new hints on how to take advantage of PhpStorm's debugging capabilities. And what we are going to do next is to look at even more enhanced remote development workflows. So first of all, there is a feature called Remote Edit, and that's been asked to be implemented for, I think, quite some years. So maybe even from the start of the PhpStorm, from the very first version. So Remote Edit is a feature which can allow you to open some single file remotely on some server, any kind of server. So let it be FTP, let it be FTPS, mounted folder. Like in this case, I have a mounted folder here. So it doesn't matter much what kind of deployment server you are going to use. So you can now open these individual files directly from the remote host. Let's look at this config, and that might be quite convenient just to go to some productions. Well, production server is not a good example actually, so don't do that on production server, but you can do it on development server. You can go to the server and edit remote file with some configuration, and then you edit this configuration, config test. You can open php.ini, for example, and then we see that PhpStorm tell us that the file has been modified, and it provides us an option to upload the file. And we can upload this single file which is not saved in our current project, so you don't need to create a project to operate these temporary configuration files or whatever. And we can either upload or even see a proper diff in the diff viewer and see what has actually changed. So we see that everything is okay. We uploaded that, and we see that this remote file has been uploaded and everything got synchronized. Yeah, so this small feature can actually help you to save some time when you need to edit some of the configuration files. And apart from that, directly on the remote server, you can also now create files. So let's make test.php. And yeah, we just got a new file on the remote server, and we didn't need to set up a project for that, and we didn't need to save the file from the remote server to our local project. So that's how it works. And yeah, if you try to close it right now, it will tell us that remote file was closed and changes are not uploaded, so we don't want to lose that. So we need to reopen that. We need to upload it back. And that's it. We've just edited some files on the remote machine. So again, don't use it for the production because that might be not that handy and not that safe as working on development machine, but that definitely might save you some time at some point. So what we're going to do next is to talk a bit about the real remote development. So as you see, we've already used the Vagrant machine at some point in order to work with PHP 7, and we run a Vagrant machine for that. So in PhpStorm 8, we've introduced a special support for different tools which can be run remotely. And at first, we introduced that for PHP interpreters. So basically, all the interpreters can be either local, so that's a standard local. It can be other local, or that can be remote. So remote might be from any kind of remote server where you can access where SSH, that can be Vagrant, that can be whatever else, basically. And with this version, we got all this remote development thing even further with remote PHP remote tools, which can be run by remote PHP interpreters. And in this case, you can easily use Vagrant or other virtualized environment with all the tools in place, and you don't need to create a local environment. So in PhpStorm 9, you can get PHP code sniffer and mess detector working via remote PHP interpreters, and you'll just look how can it be done. So here we have a code sniffer, for example, and let's assume we have some PHP interpreters already set up, as we have in our case, and we can select some of the configuration for code sniffer, and there are basically a few options that can be local, that can be by default project interpreter, and that can be by specific interpreter. So basically, if you would like to get some PHP code sniffer or mess detector, and I would say the configuration is exactly the same for both tools. And for the remote one, we need to create a new configuration. Let's assume that we are going to work with this remote PHP 7. Yeah, remote PHP 7 interpreter, and then we need to provide a path to PHP code sniffer. We need to provide maximum number of messages and whatever, like we have in local configuration as well. And after that, we just save it, and we can select the configuration which will be used for current project. So for this project, for example, we can use remote PHP 1, and we can switch it to local. And if we select by default project interpreter, that will try to search respective code sniffer and mess detector configuration based on the PHP remote interpreter you select here. So if you switch here to PHP remote PHP 7, that will switch their PHP code sniffer configuration, or it will switch their PHP mess detector configuration. And that's quite handy, so that you don't need to do that in two places. First here with the interpreter, and then again in another menu. So as soon as we have code sniffer or mess detector, which is configured in exactly the same way, as soon as we have this configuration done, we just can go to PHP inspections. Yeah, here we go. Then we need to find where we have code sniffer. Yeah, so PHP code sniffer validation. Then we need to select that we're going to use that as a set of inspections, which will be added to the default set of inspections used by PhpStorm. And then we just save it, and all the PHP code sniffer rules selected are running, or not running in this case because we shut down our Vagrant machine, but it's not that big deal currently, so that we just look into all the configuration issues. So yeah, that's what about remote development. So basically, you can now don't install your local environment, but use a Vagrant or whatever else virtualized environment and get most of the tools there. We don't put the Composer there, and that's intentionally because Composer is a bit different, and in many cases, you basically want Composer to be running on your remote machine, but you don't really want to have a Composer running in your local project, but remotely, because it might affect your remote configuration as well. So currently there is a feature request for that, but Composer stuff is not implemented to be run by PHP remote interpreters, because there are not that many use cases for now where it's used. So talking about PHP related enhancement, that's mostly it. And I actually hope that that's quite a lot of them, and we are going to switch a bit to top-notch web technologies, which are also supported by PhpStorm, because let's get back to the presentation for a couple of minutes, because that would be too much to reproduce all their web-related stuff as well as a live demo, because that might be a topic for another presentation, which is actually one of the presentations is tomorrow by Hadi Harui. He's going to show some of their tips and tricks in WebStorm, and I would definitely recommend you to visit that. So in PhpStorm 9, from the web technologies and all the WebStorm features from WebStorm 9 and 10 are included in PHPStorm 9. So all of them are here. And the first one is improved JavaScript support. And there used to be some problems with JavaScript support in general, and that's why our colleagues from WebStorm team have decided to completely rework the core of JavaScript support. So JavaScript indexing is different, and all the core of JavaScript is different right now. And it works much faster, and it works much more stable. So if you have a very big JavaScript code base, that will definitely help you to speed up your general pace of development. So the next feature is application dependency diagram, and application structure can be visualized and explored with Spy.js, introduced a couple of versions ago as well. And the diagram normally shows you how project files are connected with function calls based on the runtime data. So PhpStorm or WebStorm would analyze how your application is running and getting all the live data from there and show you dependency diagrams. The next one is tracing languages transpiled to JavaScript, and that's also related to Spy.js. So Spy.js had support for source maps, which can be used to trace TypeScript, CoffeeScript, ECMAScript 6, and all the other languages which are transpiled to JavaScript. And you can see the execution path, for example. And the last one, but not least, is V8 profiling for Node.js apps. So if you're developing Node.js, you basically can take advantage of these profiling capabilities. Yeah, and of course there are many more different improvements and enhancements in all the web technologies parts. So yeah, we are going to move next, and one of the web-related features I really enjoy and really would like to show you today. It's called simultaneous text editing, and let's find some HTML file. Yeah, so here we go. And that works both for HTML and XML. So you see we have some bullet points here. And as soon as we start to edit one of the tags here, so that was URL tag, the closing tag is also edited. And that's really handy because you don't need to do that here and then get back to the end of the string or whatever in order to edit the closing tag. PhpStorm just takes care of that in both HTML and XML, and that saves a lot of time because sometimes it's really hard to troubleshoot where you forgot this or that closing tag, or you changed one but you didn't change other part of the tag. So next, we are going to move a bit to some of the IDE improvements in general as a platform. So as you know, PhpStorm is based on the IntelliJ IDEA platform. And the first thing that we've got inherited from the IntelliJ platform is called destruction-free mode. PHP code Sniffer is still running here. So yeah, let's just go back to the Symfony application. And what we need to do is to go to View and enter destruction-free mode. And in this case, we just got really minimalistic UI. So you don't have any panes, you don't have any toolbars. And in this case, you can fully focus on your code. So you just switch to this brand new destruction-free mode, and you get no editor tabs, no windows, or just the code, and that's it. And of course, like all the completion is here, and all the rest, and also all the inspections, all the quick fixes, so nothing changes. You just don't see all the UI elements, and you get it like really straight with your code without need to distract. And we are going to enhance this view even more. And also, apart from destruction-free mode, there is a presentation view is being introduced in the last version, and we've got it enhanced as well. So you just enter the presentation mode, and all the URI gets bigger, so that it's really convenient for the presentations. If you do some talks at the user groups, or you go to some conferences and you need to present your code, you used to zoom in, you used to change the resolution of your script, and you don't need to do it anymore. You can just use the PhpStorm, and you can just enter this presentation mode, and all the UI elements, including completion, for example, would be zoomed in here. So you just get back from the presentation mode because we still need to see some of their UI elements here. So yeah, and we're back. And now we'll get to the changes in the version control systems. And the first big change which we introduced is called one-side diff viewer. So now there are two different viewers for the VCS and for not only for the VCS but also for local history and for comparing files between local and deployed version. So there is a default one, and default one is a kind of two different panes, and you can see what's changed on the right and the previous version on the left, for example. But the one we've introduced with this version is called one-side viewer, and that's really like GitHub style type of viewer. And it's very compact, and you just see everything in one pane. And in this case, we see that this test search has been changed to test search new, and here we got some changes as well. Yeah, so you can just look through it, and you can understand what's changed much faster, not going through two different panes and comparing one to another. So that's definitely a thing to explore as well. And talking about version control changes, there is usually quite many of them. So one is related to performance. So in general, the faster loading of the log viewer, this one I've just opened, so it helps you to go through all the changes much faster and see the branches and see what's going around. And there is also a reset current branch to here, which is also convenient when you see all the changes and all the branches and everything that's been committed to your project. So you just hit this one, reset current branch to here, and then you just select how exactly you would like to apply git reset to that. So you can do soft, mixed, hard, or keep reversed files. And also there are a bit more of filtering options and branch options, filtering options in the log viewer. And I'm the one committer to this small project, basically, but should have I've got a few committers here, you would be able to see my commits are highlighted. So it just can be highlighted the commits of the current author and stuff like that. And there are a few other changes. For example, remotes can be now defined right in the push dialog, and there are some exciting changes for Mercurial. So there is a graph action in the log viewer and ability to close branches in the branches pop-up, and many more. So if you use it, it's definitely worth exploring. So getting to the database tools, which project would I use? Yeah, I would use this project. So we have databases, and basically what we have in PhpStorm and other IDEs by JetBrains, in terms of databases, can replace your normal database tool, like it be SQL Yoke or MySQL Workbench or whatever. Basically, all you need is in PhpStorm or other IntelliJ-based IDE. And it got quite a lot of updates as well. So let's just look at them shortly. Let's try to open this console for this one, for example, and if we begin, let's select something. That doesn't really matter what we do here. What I want to show you is this multiple consoles per data source. So you can basically switch schema here. So we have different databases, and you have a few consoles where you can provide different queries and run queries and get the results and all the rest. So right now with this version, there is a special schemas feature, and it also affects local history and all the rest. So that really helps to switch the context and switch between databases and run it for different databases, run all the queries and whatever. There is also image detection in the table editor. So basically, if there is some image, it will be detected that it's there. There is improved documentation view, integrated Windows authentication support for Microsoft SQL Server, and many other updates. So moving a bit to some of the general updates to this version, there is also high DPI support finally provided for Windows and Linux. And we also got a new welcome screen. I'll just close the projects to show it to you. So we got a new welcome screen. It's much more cleaner right now, and it's got a new user experience and user interface. And there's also create new project which a bit reworked with all the different project types and all the rest. And Scratch files, which are basically the temporary files, can now be accessed and managed via the new Scratch tab. There are also different exciting changes to multiple selections, updated look and feel for editor tabs, the project file templates, and many other changes. So to leave some time for questions, I'll just show that if you would like to get some more information about the PhpStorm and all the changes, you can go to jetbrains.com/PhpStorm and go to What's New section, and there are many different features described and all the workflows changed and links to videos and blog posts, tutorials, and all the information is there. And you can also download PhpStorm 9 to get all the changes and all the new features. Right now there is a trial, 30-day trial. Even if you use the previous version, you can use this trial as well again. And it's also a free update if you bought PhpStorm 8, because PhpStorm license includes 1 year of free updates. So you just need to check your version if you bought your PhpStorm license after 8th of July 2014. Basically, you'll be entitled to a free upgrade. And you can send feedback to Twitter, Mikhail Vink, or PhpStorm. And recording, as I said, is going to be available at YouTube channel. So what are we going to do next is to switch to some of the questions which you have during the webinar. And I see there are quite many. So so let's just find some of the questions to go through. So the first question is, when I hit validate, I get a fail to execute validation script, connection refused, and it seems I know how to reproduce that. So I'll just show how to what should be fixed in regards to that. So here we have for web server debug validation. So for me now it works. And for example, if you provide something else, I'll get the connection refused. So basically, why you get this connection refused is that when the PhpStorm in this local web server or remote web server, PhpStorm needs to deploy a special file to the server to get the response back from it. So we need to actually provide a path to create validation script. That's the path which is accessible by the web server, and then we need to provide a valid URL which can be used in order to access this specific file. So when we provide some different host or some different URL, which this will just try to get this file, and that wouldn't be able to get this file because there is actually connection refused, and because I don't have this localhost running. In this case, I need to use localhost or specific port. So right now it connects, but it can't connect to the validation script. So I need to provide path to the project. So now it runs again. So that's the issue with fail to execute validation script. Let's move to the next one. So the next question is, can remote hoster edit be done without a project? And if not, how does it tie to the project? So frankly speaking, it can't be done at all without the project, but you can create what's called open single file. So for example, let me show you how to do that. So you just go and find any file. Let's just let it be this index. Sorry, we need to find some of the file which is not inside the project. So let me try to remember where. So we are just going to open some single file here, which should have been copied here. Yeah, so that's PhpStorm projects, and then PHP module. That's a single file. So we just opened a single file inside PhpStorm without creating a project. And well, as you see, that's just a temporary file, and we can do any kind of action with this file, and then we can connect to the remote host. And let me find somewhere where I have files. So yeah, and from here you can edit remote file. So basically, you don't need a project, but you need something to be open in the PhpStorm. So you can't just I don't know, use empty PhpStorm project, because there is no such thing as empty PhpStorm project. There should be something, but the easiest way you can do is to open a single file, and then with this single file, just go to your remote host, and from there you open some file. So I hope that answers your question. And there was a question also about remote development, or that the code sniffer or mess detector far needs to be on the remote server. So basically, yes, you need to have an executable of code sniffer and mess detector on the remote server in the same environment where you're running, where you're going to run these binaries. So yes, you need to have them remotely. If you don't want to have them remotely, of course, you can just download them to the local project, and then you just run them from the local project without any problems, but that's not related to the remote development. Another question is again about the recording, and yes, the recording is going to be available just in a couple of days after the webinar. And yeah, just stay tuned to our updates in Twitter and blog. The next question is, I quickly see surround with. What is this option? So let me see. Let me show it to you. Let's open some other project. I'll just disable code sniffer inspection so that it doesn't bug us again. So surround with is can be invoked in many places with Alt Enter, which is quick fix, and that provides you some very quick way to surround the statement with the if and some other statements. So for example, we can do the surround with if is set, and that will easily convert what you had here to if statement, checking if the file name is set. And the same is goes to empty. So basically, PhpStorm tries to understand all the intentions which you might have in your mind, which can be implied in this specific place, and provide you options to automatically implement that. Another question is related to Git and version control. So let me get the project with the other version control I have with Git. And the first question related to that is, could you please elaborate a little bit on how to read that Git history panel with branches? So I'm glad you're doing so. So in this case, let me just get it bigger. We have all the history of commits you have in your VCS. In this case, I have, well, basically one master branch, and at some point, I've got one additional branch, a remote one, and I merged at some point. And should I have got more branches here, they would be just inherited here. So that would be parallel branches, similar to something you see in the GitHub when you try to understand the history of forks, for example. And here in this log viewer, we can see everything what was going on with our VCS and with our project in the VCS. So we see all the comments, we have authors. On the right, we have all the files which been changed during the commit, and if we have, for example, 2 branches, we can cherry pick from here in the log. So in this case, all the changes have been already cherry picked to the master branch, and don't need to do that. But in general, you can explore what was going on to understand what's the current state, and you can also filter it by specific branches. You can, for example, origin master, or you can select some users to be filtered here, filter by year, filter by date. For example, last day what's been done there, and obviously nothing. So that's how our log viewer works. Another question is related to the database. Is there a way to disable a database connection if using more than one database? Yes, there is. So the required main databases I have here, and I need to go to the database configuration, and then I need to go to their schemas and tables. But let me check the connection. Okay, I don't have it for this project. So let me show you on the example we've been already doing. So we go to settings, we go to our schemas and tables, and we basically can select what database you want to use so that you don't load all the databases into the PhpStorm. And in this case, they're all indexed and they're checked against the configuration. And we unchecked a few different databases, and we've got only those we checked in the settings. So you basically need to configure data sources and drivers. There was a question about PHP unit testing in PhpStorm 9. It's a bit out of scope of this webinar, so I would send you some links to the tutorials related to unit testing in PhpStorm, because there are not that many changes related to PHP unit in PhpStorm 9, so that would be quite a lot of time to configure it right now, but I'll just link some of the tutorials in the blog post and send them personally so that you explore how to work with PHP unit in PhpStorm. There are also some questions about Git branches and the coloring of branches in Git. And basically, there were some rules of how these branches are colored, and I'll try to retrieve these rules for you, because honestly I'm not really familiar with the exact rules how the branches are colored in this case. There is a question about code profiling and performance benchmarks. So basically, there is also a tutorial on how to do a performance profiling in PhpStorm, and there are 2 ways to do that. So that depends on what debugger do you use. If you use Zen debugger, you just need to configure that all the profiles are gathered, and then debugger can send all the profiles back to the IDE, and he will just see them in the PhpStorm. And in case of Xdebug, you need to configure Xdebug profiler enable to be equal to 1, if I'm not mistaken, but you can find that in the tutorial. And then Xdebug will save profiling data to some specific file on the remote server. So after that, you need to go to Tools and I think that's which one is profile? Let's see. Yeah, that's called analyze Xdebug profiler snapshot. So after that, we just select the Xdebug profiler snapshot you've got with the tool, and you need to download that from the remote server, and then it will show you all the debugging, all the profiling data right in the IDE. The next question is, are there any updates on any other CMS support or improved support for WordPress and Drupal? There are some enhancements as usual, and we've actually created another set of API for the PhpStorm so that some of the framework-specific plugins can use it. So as far as I recall, since PhpStorm 8 release, there have been releases for Neta plugin and some other plugins. Yeah, there is obviously a Symfony 2 plugin which is getting updated all the time. Thanks a lot for Daniel and all the authors of other plugins for getting this job done. And we actually focused right now on providing the proper API to all the frameworks, so that communities knowing how to actually operate these frameworks would be able to provide the proper support for these frameworks. But of course, from our side, we also provided some specific support, and we've done some steps towards metadata support, even more advanced metadata, when you can provide a special guidance for PhpStorm to follow in regards to some of the framework-specific factory methods and and things like that. So yeah, and we hope that even more plugins for PhpStorm for specific frameworks will be here. And there have been also a few updates to the WordPress. So for example, in terms of constants. And I know that Gary Hawking is currently, who we also can congratulate on joining PhpStorm as a developer advocate, and he is actually working on specific support for Zen framework too, and that should be available quite shortly. That's more like a community effort, and he was doing that for quite a time, generating special stubs and getting some of the PhpStorm some of the Zen framework recognition of magics and all the rest to the PhpStorm. So that's basically for the frameworks. So for all the questions I haven't answered yet, we'll do that shortly in text, and some of them we will also write in the blog post. So that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the webinar, and thanks a lot for joining us. And you'll be able to find this webinar in a couple of days at youtube.com/JetBrains.tv. If you haven't yet tried PhpStorm 9, that's exactly the best time to try that, because all the new goodies are there, and we are already working on PhpStorm 9.01 early access program is started, and the update should be published or maybe in a month or something. So we are working on all the bug fixes, and yeah, so definitely try it out. Thanks a lot for the webinar, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.